bringing this message across. So pass it on to your colleagues who are not yet here. So tomorrow we are going to Kahetia. Okay, so what it means that we are actually boarding a bus at 9:30 in the morning from this hotel. The dress code is smart casual and comfortable shoes. Okay, it might be cold, so please do not wear slippers unless you are really very, very good with cold weather. Okay, it might be the case that you will be expected to do some dancing, so please wear shoes in which you can dance. Okay, yes?
And singing.
And singing, who can sing it too? Sure.
Good morning, everyone. Just to add, the colleagues, delegates who are under the World Bank team title, you also have a bus tomorrow ready here. It's going to be ready from 9, but startup is 9:30 with the rest of the teams. So the same applies to you guys as well. See you tomorrow morning.
Right. Okay. Okay. I can't direct the delegates from World Bank about dancing shoes, but I expect everyone who is funded by ADB to learn some dancing moves. Okay. So, right. Geo, the assistant of the conference, is actually getting all your boarding passes and stuff like this. So please get in touch with her. Right. Okay. This is out of the way. So I can officially tell you again, good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the second day of the 9th annual Asia Pacific Public Electronic Procurement Network Conference. So this is the day 2 of the conference, and I would like to start by introducing the moderators for the sessions today. So the moderator for the first session in the morning is my colleague, Jenny Chu. Okay, Jenny Chu is an very accomplished person. She is a chartered professional engineer and an admitted barrister and solicitor to the High Court of New Zealand. She also leads the sustainable procurement agenda in ADB. And she led the work on development of ADB Sustainable Procurement Guidance Note, country diagnostic program for 41 of ADB DMCs, as well as related capacity building program to support integration of sustainable procurement at country and project level. And Jenny recently gave birth to her second child. So I do not know how she does all of this, but here she is. So for the second session of today, we will have Hans Lakashe. And Hans Lakashe is also a very accomplished person. He is a senior public sector specialist at the World Bank's Governance Global Unit in Washington, D.C. He focuses on public sector reforms, service and knowledge functions to support World Bank's global portfolio of projects with GovTech components. Hans provides advice and support to government clients, global task teams, and governance staff in preparing and supervising projects with major GovTech investments. He plays a significant role in improving World Bank GovTech practices and approaches. He works on initiatives such as cloud frameworks and methodologies, greening, digital economy, governance, and anti-corruption. He also leads initiatives to modernize procurement function in World Bank client countries by spearheading global e-procurement initiatives and other procurement reform activities, including procurement data analytics, green public procurement, and emergency procurement. Okay, Hunt, I don't know how do you fit all of this into one day. Right. Okay, but he will be moderating the session today as well. So the third moderator for today is Sarah Codgriff, whom you've seen yesterday. And those of you who missed some sessions yesterday, for your benefit, Sarah Codgriff is a fellow of Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply, has masters in international trade, an MBA in financial services. She is a gateway reviewer and a certified MAPS assessor. She's a director of global trade company based in New Zealand. And her special interests are public and sustainable procurement, digital transformation, policy, regulation, infrastructure, and public-private partnerships. She supports governments and other clients such as ADB, World Bank, Pacific Regional Infrastructure Facility, World Trade Organization, and UNICEF across Asia and Pacific, UK, and US. From 2012 to 2018, she was Chief Commercial Officer of Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade in New Zealand, where she managed procurement and grants for the New Zealand Aid Program. And previously, she worked for ADB, building procurement and project management capacity for staff and governments. She designed ADB procurement accreditation skill scheme, and more recently, its technology innovation challenge process. And from 2004 to 2007, Sarah was the director of e-commerce and shared services in UK Central Procurement Agency, leading a change program to implement e-procurement. Okay, last but not least, moderator of today is me, and I'm not thinking I need any introduction. Thank you. So over to you, Jenny.
All right, now the technology works. Good morning, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the very first sessions on sustainable procurement. I'm delighted to be your moderator for these sessions. Sustainability is at the core of development, and procurement is not an exception. As raised by many speakers yesterday sessions, the global and regional scale of public procurement present a huge opportunity to advance innovation, address climate change issues, social inclusiveness agenda, and ultimately drive economic and institutional growth. ADB as a regional climate bank is fully committed to use procurement as a tool to support sustainable development goals and our commitment to full alignment of Paris Agreement. We have undertaken some actions, as my colleague Scalia mentioned, including providing guidance note, training, and also country diagnostics in our work on country and also project level. And we are not alone. Last month, the heads of procurement from 12 multilateral development banks, including our own Mr. Jeff Taylor, who you've met yesterday, endorsed and released a joint statement on sustainable procurement, which reflect the collective intent from the MDB to mainstream sustainable procurement agenda in its operations on both national public procurement system level and also within the project operations procurement as each MDB's permit allow. And so far at this conference, yesterday, we've already heard about the power of digital tool to enable procurement efficiency, strengthen governance practices, transparency, building public trust, participation, and the importance of equipping the public procurement practitioner with professionalization program to meet this increasing demand, complexity, and opportunities. And in these sessions, we are very fortunate to have a distinguished panel of speakers to share with us the experience and insight on using procurement and technology to make headway on environmental and social sustainability objective in particular. Now, may I please invite our panelists on stage? We have our distinguished speakers, Dr. Solomon Pervliashvili, the Deputy Minister of Environmental Protection and Agriculture of Georgia, please come on stage. We also have Ms. Rowena Candice Roos, Executive Director, Government Procurement Policy Board of the Philippines. We have Mr. Kai-Shan Hu, Principal Staff Members, Government Procurement Management Office, Ministry of Finance of People's Republic of China. And last but not the least, we also have joining with us online again today, Ms. Leslie Harper, Senior Procurement Specialist, Inter-American Development Bank. I hope Leslie is able to also join online and taking part in the session now. So I'll leave the team to confirm that. I would like to now introduce our first speakers, Dr. Solomon Priflia-Fridley. And with that, I also want to remind the audience maybe to put the headset on because translation to English will be provided for these first sessions. Dr. Priflia-Fridley holds the positions of Deputy Minister of Environmental Protection and Agriculture of Georgia since December 15, 2017. And prior to that, he held the positions of Acting Minister as well as First Deputy Minister of Environment and Natural Resources Protection of Georgia. In 2003 to 2004, he was a Deputy Minister of Economy, Industry and Trade of Georgia. In 2001 to 2003, he was the Minister of State Property Management of Georgia. And prior to that, from 1999 to 2004, he was a Member of Parliament of Georgia of the 5th Convocation, the first Deputy Chairman of the Budget Committee of the Parliament of Georgia as well. He also received many distinguished recognition, including this year, the Gold Medal of the Technical University of Georgia. In 2019, the award of Peter Pater Gugushvili Scientific Prize in the field of economic science for his work, and also first degree scientific scholarship of the President of Georgia. He is a Doctor of Economics, Academician of the Georgian National Academy of Science, Vice President of the Georgian Academy of Economic Sciences, Professor of the Georgian Technical University. In 2011 to 2016, he was Director of Tbilisi Teaching University. He has published 18 monographs and over 100 scientific publications in local and international scientific journals on micro and macroeconomics, agricultural sciences, circular economy, environment, international economic relations, and other thematic issues. I would like to now hand the floor to Dr. Priflia-Fridley. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Can I continue in Georgian?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me. And for me, it's a big honor to participate in such a large-scale conference that is being held in Georgia. And I would like to thank organizers, those who decided to conduct this conference. So in general, the green economic growth is a challenge throughout the globe, and that's very nice and very soothing that one of the stages of this conference is being held in Georgia. I would like to tell you that our country is green growth oriented, and we are in general trying to implement the green concept, the sustainable procurement, sustainable SDGs. And one of the main players in this is, of course, SDG of the Procurement Agency, who is hosting this event today. Of course, Ministry of Environment Protection and Agriculture welcomes you. I welcome on behalf of our ministry and on behalf of the government. Our ministry is coordinator of green economic growth, of course, together with the Ministry of Economy. But one of the main players in this field is exactly the Procurement Agency, who is your host today, and who has made very significant steps towards environmentally sound procurement. So that is very important. When we speak about the SDGs that are the SDGs 2030, out of these goals, 12 to 13 goals are directly related to environment, to ecology, to desertification, to poverty, and that is, of course, directly or indirectly linked with the Ministry of Environment. And of course, with the procurement process, which we call the green procurement or sustainable procurement. What is the main goal of this concept and what we are doing? Of course, we already have made the steps, and this component of the sustainable procurement has already been reflected in the law on the public procurement that has already been passed by the Parliament of Georgia, and the procurement agency was one of the initiators of this. And it's very important that the country is working for the circular economy strategy. So what we are trying to do, everything we can do in order to reduce the pressure on the resources and growth of the circular economy, and introduction of the circular economy concept in our country is one of the top priorities. And during the years, with the support of Swedish government and with the support of international partners, we are working for this. And of course, the procurement agency is involved in this process, and sustainable public procurements is one of the most important components in this field. So what is the new platform? This is very new platform that, frankly speaking, it is a little bit, the awareness and the public awareness on this is not very high. And of course, we are experiencing some difficulties like anywhere in the world, but this is the new platform, which is for implementing the procurement process in a form that the goods or services should be the a long life cycle, and also it's after expiration of its use value. It's very important that the waste should be reprocessed. We shall be able to recycle this waste. Also, it's very important that it shall involve as few human resources as possible. So what happens? Economic growth is, of course, very good, but economic growth is good when the environment is protected and the social principles are observed, and the world is discussing this. And that's why you are meeting here today. And that's our main goal, to spend as few resources as possible in the economy. The time has passed when we had an understanding that the resources are limitless. No, they are limited, and that's can be seen more clearly by years. And there are also climate change adds to this, and pollution adds to this, and that, of course, hinders green economic development. And in this part, all the countries can make their contributions. We just shouldn't think that we are a small country and we can't make any difference. No, we are not a big player, maybe, but we have claims that based on the European directives, we can make steps that are required by the standards, by European standards, and that are the globally accepted standards. So our today's meeting, it will be one more motivator for allowing our country to make additional steps and to go into that direction. Of course, we are focusing on wasteless technologies, and 2 days ago we had a meeting on the circular economy strategy, and we have already assessed the circular economy in our country. So we have seen what sectors are interesting, where we can reuse or recycle the waste. It's not only about economic growth. Of course, that's important, but even more important is how we use it, how cost effective it is, how energy efficient it is, and all this should be reflected in the procurement process. And of course, all the institutions should be involved in this. Not only, of course, the procurement agency, but every institution. We, I mean, as a ministry, everybody should focus on this to inform the budget saving procurement and resource saving procurement, and we should be using as few resources as possible. And along with this, it is very important to implement the electronic procurement, which is very important stage in general in the green procurement, and also it's very important to make the steps to ensure the public involvement, public participation, and together with ministry. We have made a memorandum of understanding with the procurement agency. We have so we have some educational center under our ministry, and they prepare these materials. What is eco-innovation? What is labeling, eco-labeling certification? So that's why they're working with this. They have done a lot. Also, we have involved mass media to show them what's happening in the various enterprises. So we are working in this direction, and we think that we will have outcomes. As for this, there are some global challenges that are also we are also facing, but all the institutions shall take this into consideration. But not only state institutions, not only public institutions, but also private sector. Private sector approaches should also be approached, and so who should be doing this? This should be done by each and every person, and we shall strive for raising awareness, public awareness, in order to enable this. And we shall be thinking about using renewables in our economy, renewables like sun, solar, wind, wave, and many, many others that will be useful for development of economy. We don't have some panacea that we don't have expectation that the country will switch totally and the procurement will be only green procurement. No, this is just a way, the road which has no alternative, but we still shall do everything to focus on this. However, we the main economic model, and we should have the model that will be functioning in this country, and it's very important, therefore, that to involve all the institutions. So I can speak a lot about this, about steps made, but the fact that in our country we already have the green economic growth concept. When we are speaking about the repeated use of the waste, recycling of the waste, about technologies. So what shall bring this about? This shall be brought about by the introduction of new technologies, the new technologies that are wasteless technologies. And our main goal is not to place as much waste as possible at the landfills, but no, it's for us important to return this to the economy and to create new additional value, added value in our economy. That's what we're striving to, and that's nobody should say that procurement and economy are separated. No, we shall collaborate with each other, and that's our goal. That's the whole cycle. This is value chain in which all the institutions shall be involved. We need complex attitudes toward this. That's not fragmented, that it's not the responsibility of only one institute. That's a responsibility of everybody, starting from public, private, and of course society, civil society involvement. And we shall do everything with this regard. And once again, I would like to confirm my respect for our country. It's a big honor that this conference is being held in Georgia. And once again, thank you very much. Welcome, and wish you a successful working day.
Thank you, Deputy Minister, for sharing your vision and also the experience and the plan on what Georgia is doing to promote and integrate sustainable public procurement in your program of work. Certainly very exciting to hear about the steps you have undertaken to engage with the market, to raise awareness, and also providing tools for its full implementation in the country. And now we want to move on to the second speakers, which is Leslie Harper. She's joining us online here. Leslie, are you online here with us?
Yes, I'm with you. I've joined.
Right. Well, we can see your picture here with us. We can hear you as well. So thank you for returning on day 2 of the conference. Leslie Harper from Inter-American Development Bank has over 20 years of experience as an international development professional working on Latin America and the Caribbean, and is an expert in public procurement reform and modernization. She is the gender and diversity focal point for the Visual Management Division, where she is responsible for portfolio monitoring and mainstreaming of gender and diversity in FISO projects. She has supported multiple countries in the Latin America region in the development of women in public procurement programs. And she has been the lead on high-profile event and knowledge product to promote cutting-edge trend in the topic. So over to you, Leslie. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Just one second. I'll share my screen. Okay, so good morning, everyone, again. Before I begin, I would like to thank the Asian Development Bank again, Galia Gizmakova and team, for the opportunity to join you in this important network event. And also to thank my moderator, Jenny Tu, and fellow panelists. And I'm very pleased to be presenting on this key panel on sustainable procurement. So today so as we all know, sustainable procurement is a process where organizations meet their need for goods, services, works, and utilities in a way that achieves value for money on a life cycle basis while addressing equity principles for sustainable development, thereby benefiting societies and environment across time and geography. It's generally considered to have three pillars: environmental, economic, and social. So today I'm going to be focusing on the experience that the Inter-American Development Bank has had with the third pillar, social aspects, and particularly gender. So socially responsive public procurement is harnessing the purchasing power of the state to advance public policy objectives in the country. It's about achieving positive social outcomes in public contracts. By purchasing wisely, public buyers can promote employment opportunities, decent work, social inclusion, accessibility, and seek to achieve wider compliance with social standards. And gender-responsive procurement in particular can be seen through the more narrow definition of promoting women-owned businesses in public procurement, or the broader definition, which would include businesses that are gender-responsive, regardless of the gender identity of the business owners. It's important to note, of course, that public policies such as these for public procurement can play a key role in achieving the Sustainable Development Goal number 5 on gender, equality, and women's empowerment, and also the SDGs 1 and 8 regarding poverty and economic growth. And why is there such interest in promoting women in public procurement? The answer is that there's tremendous scope for improvement. Worldwide, less than 1% of the estimated 10 trillion spent annually on global public procurement is awarded to women-owned businesses. And what are the barriers that explain this low participation? They have less access to credit. According to the World Bank, only 49% of women have a bank account, 11% save, and 10% have access to loans. In some countries in the region, gender gaps in financial capabilities can also be found, and it's been shown that women have less financial knowledge and riskier financial behaviors compared to men. And there's also barriers related to access to digital technologies, as we talked about yesterday. Many women-owned businesses are in rural areas or lack access to the internet. And there's also barriers related to limited experience. Women often limit their own participation due to the lack of knowledge about the public market, limited use of time because they have family or other economic activities with their care responsibilities, and greater caution due to fear of risk. And the latter because they feel they're compromising families' assets. And there's also barriers related to knowledge and business capabilities. For example, how to develop a bid and the capabilities to meet the requirements and the knowledge about meeting the requirements of the public entities. So what has the IDB been doing? We've been supporting gender-responsive procurement for over 10 years. Some key examples, which I've talked about in previous presentations, include Chile, the Sello Mujer, which is a certification program that recognizes women-owned business. Chile also included awareness building, seminars, and training, with the result of the increase by 25% in the number of women participating in public procurement. There's also Peru, which provided a key training in the use of electronic government procurement to be able to take advantage of these technological tools when participating in the procurement market. Supplier identification through a certification program, business roundtables, and awareness building and outreach with the private sector and civil society. We've also been supporting the Dominican Republic that has a law for the preference for women-owned businesses. They have a registry and catalog of women suppliers, and more than 11,000 women have been registered in their program. Dominican Republic has also been key because they've been promoting women-owned businesses in non-traditional sectors like PPPs and works, etc. The result there is that the participation of women in the public procurement market increased 14% to 26% for a total of 16% of total procurement awards. In Honduras, and this is a program we're supporting now with a technical assistance program, specifically geared towards the promotion of certification of women-owned businesses. And that we started with a diagnostic assessment to get to know the world of the suppliers and the demand in terms of the countries. And here we did identification of barriers, including the technological gaps, what's preventing women from participating fully in the public procurement market, and an action plan for the development of a certification program, as well as they're going to make adjustments to their supplier registry in a module of the electronic government procurement in order to be able to recognize women-owned businesses. And then finally, we've also supporting Argentina, the city of Buenos Aires. And this one is very innovative for two reasons. One, I think it's one of the first in the world to have a certification program for women, well, definitely in Latin America, I know for sure, at the subnational level. And it's also important because in the city of Buenos Aires, they also reward not only ownership, but also firms that have gender-sensitive practices. And I think this is important because there's a lot of scope for being able to support to include more firms that have such practices. And there it's expected to raise the participation of women-owned businesses in public procurement from 15% to 45%. And so what are some of the lessons learned, challenges? I think very important, of course, like anything we do, political will. These are challenging reforms and we need support and buy-in from the highest levels. The public procurement ecosystem, it's a very critical to build alliances with the private sector, chambers of commerce, ministries that focus on women, etc. Digital divide. While Latin America as a whole is fairly equal in terms of access to the internet and mobile phones, that's not the case in other parts of the world. We need good quality data that is collected and made publicly available is essential. That's why these certification programs are so important. They help gather data about who's selling to the state and the profile of those businesses. So we need data on how many procurement exercises are currently used to achieve gender equality. We need better national level indicators that should be developed and updated on a regular basis. And also we need to explore how gender equality is addressed at different stages of the procurement cycle. Currently, a lot of the focus has been on the training of suppliers and selection criteria. And this is important, but however, this could be expanded to include, for example, market testing, end user engagement, risk identification and assessment, designing technical specifications, contract award criteria auditing, among many others. And then finally, the need for capacity building, support for capacity building for both the public and private sectors. This includes tools like eco and social labels, sustainable procurement criteria, case studies, and guides. On the supplier side, many women-owned businesses have limited experience with public procurement, as I mentioned before, and resistance to participation is not only due to technical terms, but often stems from a lack of the familiarity with pursuing business opportunities with the government. And on the procurement agency side, the lack of understanding on how to achieve the gender objectives through public procurement practices remains to be a challenge for many policymakers. And then also another final point is that you also need to have clear about what you want to achieve and why. It's very important. So what are some opportunities to leave you with? Support not just the participation of women-owned businesses, but also firms with gender-sensitive policies, as I mentioned in the case of the city of Buenos Aires. Explore support for the inclusion of other disadvantaged groups, such as people with disabilities, ethnic minorities, and the LGBTQ community. And finally, increase the scope and the use and scope of technological tools in public procurement as increased access to information and greater transparency can support the inclusion of underrepresented groups in public procurement. So with that, I conclude my presentation and back to you, Jenny. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leslie, for your presentation. And indeed, gender inclusiveness is one of the important objectives that sustainable procurement can help promote. Now, I want to introduce the next speakers, Mr. Kai-san Hu. Mr. Hu is a principal staff specialist from Government Procurement Management Office, Department of Treasury, Ministry of Finance at People's Republic of China. He is mainly involved in the research of legal system, policy formulation, and electronic procurement in the field of government governance. Over to you, Mr. Hu. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Hu Kaixiang, and I'm from the Ministry of Finance of China. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to present a brief introduction of government procurement and the sustainable procurement in China. The first part is about the government procurement system reformed in China. In China's government procurement, pilot work started from 1996. On January 1st, 2003, government procurement law entered into force. Since then, China's government procurement has entered into the implementation stage of legal management. Currently, the government procurement system has become an important part of public finance and effective means of regulation of the economy. The advantage of the system becomes more prominent. And in general, our government procurement system is still young compared to some countries, and there are much things that we could learn. The legal framework of government procurement system is guided by the government procurement law and supported by departmental rules and regulations. We have several ministerial decrees and a number of regulatory documents. It covers the procurement budget, program management, information dissemination, procurement procedures, contract award, the relief system and policy functions, supervision and integrity management, and implementation of government procurement process. Over the past 20 years, the scale of government procurement in China has grown nearly 40 times. The second part, I would like to talk about the government procurement policies in China. The use of government procurement policies to support innovation, to support small and medium-sized enterprises, and to support poverty, etc., is a common practice around the world. When we talk about the sustainable procurement in China, we primarily focus on beneficial impact on the environment. To achieve the goal of sustainable procurement, we have taken specific measures in several different ways, and I will describe the following three measures. The first approach is mandatory procurement of certified products. The Ministry of Finance issued a list of government procurement items, which covers products such as computers, automobiles, office furniture, and so on, and the mandatory procurement of products certified by testing and the certification organizations to ensure that the products have the energy efficiency labels, water saving labels, or environmental protection labels. And the second approach is to build a system of requirements standards over time. In recent years, the Ministry of Finance had issued Green Data Center Standard, Goods and Express Packaging Standard, Green Building Materials Standard, and we embedded green and environmental requirements in these standards. And through these standards, procurement units are guided to rationalize their procurement needs and implement green procurement requirements in their procurement activities. And the third approach is to carry out pilot work. we select a group of cities to explore effective models for the promotion and application of green buildings and green building materials in public procurement projects, such as the schools, hospitals, and other public buildings. It should be emphasized that the three approaches mentioned above are all aimed at achieving sustainable procurement goal without additional budgetary increases. And the third part is about the EGP practice in China. Currently, there are 7 centralized procurement agencies under the authority of the central government in China. Some of these agencies establish EGP platforms. These platforms mainly serve the central authorities and some vertical administrative departments. And most provinces also establish their own EGP platforms, which based on local realities and special needs. At present, all the EGP platforms I mentioned above are mainly functions are focused on the budget management, electronic transactions, and expert and agency library management and data analysis. Typically, that we thought the benefits of the e-platforms, including improving transparency in government procurement and reducing transaction costs, and to enhance the supervision. And that's my presentation. Thanks for your listening.
Thank you, Mr. Hu, for sharing with us your practice and some of the initiatives that People's Republic of China is undertaking to promote sustainable procurement agenda. Our last expert, but not the least, is Ms. Rowena Candace Bruce from the Philippines. She is the Executive Director of the Government Procurement Policy Board, and she's an expert on digital transformation and public procurement. Her leadership has led to innovation reforms, focusing on data-driven policies, capacity building, and technology solutions for efficiency and transparency. She secured the Philippines observer status in the World Trade Organization's Committee on Government Procurement in 2019. And during the pandemic, she spearheaded digital transformation for crisis adaptation, fostering transparency in public funds through online portals. Recognized globally for her technology innovation in public services, she has been a driving force for green procurement and sustainable development in the Philippines. Over to you, Rowena. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Pleasant morning to everybody. I'm Rowena from the Philippines, from the Philippines Government Procurement Policy, and I'm very, very honored to be part of this morning session. I want to thank the ADB for inviting me over, and of course to the Government of Georgia for your very warm welcome to all of us. So I want to be able to share to you what we have been doing in terms of sustainable public procurement in the Philippines, particularly green public procurement. And I wish to start perhaps with, where should I point this? There. Let's start with this one. Fun fact. In the Philippines, a cookie tin can might not necessarily just be a cookie tin can. Would you guess what it could also be? How did you know that? Okay. You do that as well. Right. So that's true. In the Philippines, this is most likely have been repurposed into a sewing kit, tool can. So if you have a Filipino friend, go to their house, and I bet you, most certainly you would find a cookie tin can or an ice cream tub, and it would not contain any food whatsoever. It would contain something else. So why am I sharing this? I'm sharing this because I think, and this applies to most countries, that even before we've coined the term sustainable public procurement, even before we talk about circular economy and all that, we've actually been practicing it. We certainly didn't have any legal or institutional framework to actually continuously and consistently do this. From my grandmother to my mother, we've actually been practicing this. And perhaps that allows us to ask a question: what have led us, and perhaps local practices in your country, to actually do this without having to be forced to do so? And I think it's because it's something that has been culturally, socially, or even personally ingrained to us. And I think that's really the key to effectively implementing sustainable public procurement. It shouldn't just be a requirement, but I have to caution you, we certainly did not implement SPP in the Philippines through a cookie tin can. Certainly not. There's really much more to that. But I really want to be able to share with you that effectively it's really a mindset more than anything else. Strategies, frameworks will differ and change, but at the end of the day, if we're not able to really embed this into our way of life, just like what Leslie mentioned earlier, we need to know what we're doing and why. It would be very difficult for us to be able to move any needle whatsoever. So let me now show you how we did it in the Philippines. I think all of us can resonate with the fact that public procurement is a very effective tool. Public procurement accounts to generally 12 to 15% of any country's GDP. In the Philippines alone, for instance, for the national government or central government, 2.5 trillion pesos, or about $45 billion, is open to public procurement. And so we want to be able to use public procurement as an important and effective leverage to be able to really push forward secondary governmental objectives like green and sustainable public procurement. And that's what we did. We want to be able to inspire by the government leading by example. And also, we didn't have to reinvent things. We actually used our existing legal framework. We didn't have to pass any law or any issuances for that matter, for us to be able to embed green specification as our first entry point to sustainable public procurement. At the same time, it has to be done through a circumspect approach. We need to be able to be practical insofar as thinking about our stakeholders. So we have to engage with them. And because we heavily engage with our stakeholders, not only procuring entities, policymakers, but also suppliers, we have to do this gradually. The way we did it, instead of adopting eco-labeling standards and all that, we actually have included 10 common use supply items. So that would be your paper, cleaning materials, that has green specification in it. And this is mandatory for the Philippines. So whenever you're going to procure these 10 common use items, it will have green criteria. But on the other hand, we also implemented 10 non-common use items that is voluntarily embedded with green specification. Despite it being voluntary, I have to say that we have had gradual increase in adoption from 26% in 2019 to 52% in 2020, and in 2020 to about 58%. Voluntarily, procuring entities have been embedding green criteria to these 10 non-common use items. Now, at the end of the day, because we can't do this overnight, we need to also adopt a stepwise approach. So ideally, what we want to do is to advance the adoption over the years and expanding the items as we go along in implementing sustainable public procurement. Now, all this seems to be very good, neat, clean, and seems ideal, but it is not without any difficulties. And in fact, along the way, we did encounter the pain points. As they say, when the rubber meets the road, that's when you really encounter the challenges or difficulties. And in the case of the Philippines, what we have are these critical pain points that we have observed over the years. But at the center of it, I think it really is the compliance mindset. From what I've experienced, public procurement is really more of a transactional thing for most procurement practitioners. It's something we need to do, something we have to do. It's not really taken as a strategic imperative for some secondary governmental objectives like SPP or GPP. So that from a procurement practitioner's point of view, this is something I have to do because I'm required to do it. And so because if it's just something I have to do or need to do, then if I'm not required to do it, I don't have to do it. Okay. This is, of course, heightened by the fact that there's also, on one end, lack of awareness. Not everybody knows that there's such a thing as a green public procurement framework in the Philippines that we've launched in 2017. On the other hand, there's also the disintegration of data. when we started to monitor green public procurement implementation in the Philippines, we really had difficulty finding the right set of data. We don't know really where to go. There's actually not one implementing agency that was tasked to do the monitoring for this. So that really goes into the next pain point, which is the capacity of our procurement practitioners. Yesterday, we heard from our distinguished speaker that in most countries, procurement practitioners is not a standalone profession. It's an add-on job. It's something you do on top of what you're doing regularly. And therefore, it becomes really more of a burden for our practitioners, procurement practitioners on the ground. Because this is not something that is required, therefore, there's really no incentive for them to actually undertake green public procurement. At the same time, they may not really have the capacity. One may be a very good engineer or a medical doctor, but they may not really have the proficiency in embedding green specification in the bidding documents. So there goes really the difficulty of having to actually implement this. And of course, because there's still that perception that going green is more expensive, then there's the threat from our audit institution for procurement projects with green specification to be audited. Often the case is that audit officers would say, why do you have to buy this if there's a cheaper alternative? So if you're a procurement officer, why risk? Why suffer the burden of having to explain to your audit officers why you're buying green? So that is really some of the main and critical pain points that we have to deal with. But this is not to say that everything is really just negative. No, there's no positive side to implementing sustainable public procurement. There are actually small wins that we have undertaken. We have actually achieved over the years. Number one, as I said, we do have already an established legal framework. We didn't have to pass any law, so there's really not much change management there. There's also very strong political support. Recently, we have actually started working on amending our 20-year-old procurement law. And at the heart of this amendment is the institutionalization of sustainable and green public procurement. So we do have a lot of push coming from legislators, from policy holders, including our very own president, in pushing for putting into our legal framework sustainable public procurement. We also have already a robust capacity development program. We have trained trainers. We have already modules on green public procurement, lifecycle costing, and all that. Not to say it's sufficient. We need to be able to enhance this, but at least we have that already. And finally, we see a growing green market, especially in the Philippines. So all this combined, looking into the pain points as well as what we have been successful in achieving so far in the implementation as SPP, really did allow us to be able to push forward. And that's why I'm happy to know that based on the latest UNEP assessment report, the Philippines actually increased its rating in 3 important items: environmental criteria, practical support, as well as in monitoring. And in fact, in monitoring, the Philippines achieve a higher score compared to global and regional median. So this really shows that despite the challenges and the pain points, we have leveraged the small wins or the opportunities that we have, the good points that we have been able to achieve in implementing sustainable public procurement. And this has led us to actually upscale the implementation. What is different in the way we're upscaling this is that instead of what traditionally has been happening where you expand the products, instead of identifying products, we actually identified 5 broad categories by which you can expand inclusion of green criteria. So we've included building materials, ICT products, motor vehicles, catering, and lease of venue. Why the 5 broad categories? Because this is essentially where public procurement comes in. This is essentially what we procure, mostly in government. So we want to be able to leverage that as well. And finally, way forward. Knowing all of these good points, and pain points as well, what have we been doing? What we've been trying to do is really look for practical interventions. That's why part of the things that we're doing is that we want to integrate green thinking at the budget proposal level. Why is it the case? Even if there's a budget for a project where you can include green criteria, there's always a pushback coming from the practitioners, because unless their boss or the higher level authority tells them to incorporate green, they wouldn't want to do that. They wouldn't want to do it because they risk themselves of being audited and all that. So why not start from the budget preparation level? What we're trying to do is incorporate green tagging so that at the budget proposal stage, projects with green criteria or green specification may perhaps have a higher chance of getting their budget proposal approved. And we'll also be able to monitor its implementation from budget proposal to approval to actual project implementation. Next to that is we want to be able to provide more practical support to our practitioners. Again, at the end of the day, we need to professionalize them and we need to be able to show them how, from project design to bid specifications to actual post-qualification, because it's one thing to actually put it in a policy or in a legal framework, it's quite another to actually implement it. So an SOP or standard operating procedure would certainly help our practitioners. Learning also from how technology has been very, very effective tool. Remember yesterday we learned that technology is very, very effective tool. It's not a silver bullet, but it's a tool for us to be able to use in pushing for our sustainable agenda. We are hoping to do that by with the development of an online GPP hub or Green Public Procurement Hub in the Philippines, where it's a one-stop shop. Everything that you need to know, from what are the items, what are the specifications, what are the use cases, what are the success story from our pilot projects, you'll be able to find from this. We'll also be engaging with suppliers so they can actually also highlight green products or items that they have available in the market. And to support this somehow, we're also looking into the creation of a financial or GPP Impact Toolkit. The GPP Impact Toolkit is also a way by which we can incorporate technology by, say, using AI, because it's one thing to say we have procured X billion pesos or dollars with green specification, but it's quite another to understand the impact or effect of this, because at the end of the day, there's also greenwashing issues. So it's not just really buying something green, but it's also identifying the specific impact buying green has, not only in the economy, but also particularly in how procuring entities implement, so that perhaps with the use of AI, there's predictive, planning in terms of what works better, or how much or how great impact this project would have compared to the others. And this is what the GPP Impact Toolkit intends or wishes to do. No? And I want to end by saying that if you look at all of the things that we're planning to do in terms of enhancing green public procurement, we're looking at really practical support. We're not really creating something new. It's really something that we've learned from the pain points I've mentioned. And it's also trying to change that mindset of our practitioner, that this is not something that is simply aspirational. This is something that we should be doing as a matter of practice. This is something that should be embedded in the way we procure. It's not just an add-on, it's not just a target. It's something that should be standard and should be mainstream when we talk about public procurement. And thank you very much. That's all I have. And thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Rowena, for succinctly sort of summarizing a lot of the opportunity and challenges that you face in promoting it at the country system. And we will look forward to collaborating with you on some of the initiatives that you've mentioned. So now I'm going to just ask a few questions to this panelists, and then I'll open the floor to more question and answer as well. So the first question is for Leslie. As you've talked about the importance of certification system to generate more gender responsive procurement. Can you maybe also share with us your experience in relation to electronic procurement to drive maybe other socially inclusive agenda as well, or environmental impact agenda from the Inter-American Development Bank's program of work?
Yeah, sure. Happy to. So in my experience, electronic procurement has played a key role in gender responsive outcomes. So for example, for the procurement agency and policymakers, electronic government procurement is key for providing tools to gather actionable information, such as understanding who is selling to the state, what is the profile of those businesses, and how to reach them for training and address pain points. And this can be done through the certification programs, which I mentioned, particularly supplier registries. As I mentioned, we're supporting in Honduras. So that'll enable the Public Procurement Agency in Honduras to gather more about information about the women-owned businesses that are participating in the public procurement market. And then for women-owned businesses that want to participate in the public procurement market, electronic government procurement can provide, for example, as I talked about some yesterday, greater access to information, which can provide information on subcontracting opportunities, no geographical constraints, business capabilities. So the electronic government procurement we've seen in a lot of the countries that have simplified the costs of developing a bid, which are important for small and medium-sized enterprises, of which many women-owned businesses, as well as other disadvantaged groups that are participating in public procurement, tend to be more smaller businesses. So that simplification, elimination of repetitive tasks is key to supporting them. And then also finally, of course, as I mentioned before, data, a supplier registry that enables the system to identify businesses that are owned by women and minorities, and business intelligence modules, which provide information about business opportunities so that those businesses can better understand the public procurement market and then be able to adjust and target their participation. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Engaging with the market, especially the women-led enterprise, certainly a very effective way to achieve the outcome. And I understand that also recently the head of MDB signed a joint statement to commit to the Women Enterprise Finance Code as well. So that's something that we look forward to hearing more success story in the global community. The next question is for Mr. Kai-san Hu. You talk about promoting small, medium enterprise and environmental agenda through procurement policy. Can you also maybe share with us maybe what other tools do you have in your system to support its actual development and implementation? Thank you.
From a policy perspective, we require all general units to set aside a sector of their annual government procurement budget exclusively for SMEs. And which means that in this group of programs that large companies cannot even participate in. On the other hand, for the programs that not exclusively for SMEs, they also could get an evaluation bonus compared to the large companies. And from a practice perspective, how to characteristic SME is a complex issue, because there will always be companies posing as SMEs in order to get contracts. And we have the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology, which the department is responsible for classification of the SMEs. And meanwhile, we have a comprehensive set of challenge and complaint mechanisms. And we normally through the administrative the jurisdiction to solve the disputes. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Hu. Having that sort of integration to budget level, as other speakers already mentioned, and also working across different ministry to drive the actual implementation will definitely makes it sort of more achievable as well. So definitely we're not doing it alone, as we've mentioned at the start. So now a question for Rowena. You've mentioned a number of pain points, a number of toolkits and actions that you want to undertaken to drive it forward. What do you think is the most urgent and important element that is top of your list to actually implement it on not just the country system level, but also on a project level as well?
I think right now is really effective monitoring tool, and that's why we're pushing for the GPPB hub. The reason for that really is that, as Leslie pointed out, data is very critical. It's very difficult for you to really plan how to move forward if you don't know where you are at exactly, and if you don't really have a reliable data to base it on. And with the monitoring system that we are looking forward to implement. I think it would be easier to really identify further the pain points and as well as identify mitigation measures, not only at the project level, but also from a policy perspective to the procuring entity level, and then go down to the basic. And it will also help us enhance our capacity development program, because then we can use the hub itself as a way to further enhance how our practitioners, how our trainers are to support them also in how they implement green public procurement in the Philippines.
Yeah, that monitoring and reporting piece is definitely very important to generate data that can feed back to the planning cycle and also raise awareness and engage market and other stakeholders as well. So final question from me for all the panelists is, how can we maximize the benefit of technology innovation to create that space for sustainable procurement? We talk about generating data, we're talking about raising awareness, we talk about engaging with the market. Is there any other thing that you want to share with us, or in terms of a call for action to leverage on the technology advance that we have nowadays to sort of make headways in this space? Anyone want to start first?
Let me start. I think one thing we have to remember is that technology is a tool for us to use. As I mentioned earlier, it's not a silver bullet. It will not answer all of our procurement problems or even sustainable development problems or concerns. But it's one thing for us to be able to strategically use it so that we can get not only to be able to provide information, because really right now I think technology, technology has sort of democratized a lot of things, especially in the Philippines, particularly access to information. So we need to be able to really harness on that advantage, but also for us to help make those important and critical decisions. Like what I mentioned, it can help us perhaps in terms of analyzing what works better in terms of the strategies that we wish to implement, what would work better in terms of green specifications, in terms of what particular standards we should incorporate in the projects that we'll be implementing. So I think it's how we actually try to identify the pain points and use technology to be able to help us mitigate those pain points.
In my opinion, that maybe the electronic platforms maybe in our country could help us to do more things on about the information disseminations, because that there are large difference between our different processes, and the information are not very flexible to every area. So that will be help.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I believe that use of technologies practical application of technologies is of paramount importance on every level. When we are talking about green economy, first and foremost, we should be thinking about stressing on application of technologies. And not only disseminating information or making decisions. Yes, of course, this is also quite important, but practical application of technologies is one of the pillars of the green economy. We are talking about cutting edge technologies, because otherwise the green economy won't work for you. It's not just a standard economical model when you extract, consume, and get rid of something. No, we are talking about recycling of stuff, and that's why we would require technologies that will give us a chance to make it circular, to bring back the waste into another cycle. So the waste would turn into a raw material for the next cycle of consumption. As for the information and its dissemination, by all means, of course, it's important as well. And electronic platforms and devices, digital devices might come in handy in this. And it will be important because we are stressing on information here. And in order to spread the word, of course, you would rely on electronic means as well. Otherwise, it won't work given the amount of people living on this planet nowadays. And it will help you to raise awareness as well. Because it's not sufficient to change the mindset of decision makers only. You need to change the mindsets of the society in general as well. And behavioral patterns are to be changed. And only then it will work, when it all works in harmony, when it's all concerted, when decision makers are acting in a way that society expects them to do and society is following their lead.
So Leslie, do you have any comments on that, or yes,
I would just like to compliment what the other speakers have said by saying the importance of training and capacity building. And here it's super important to partner with, take into account the whole public procurement ecosystem, partner with the other line ministries, partner with chambers of commerce that are working with the small and medium-sized enterprises or women-owned businesses, or the target audience you want, to make sure that they're aware of these tools and how to use them appropriately. And also, of course, the training for the public procurement officers so that to make sure they're on board with how the new technologies and how they can best take advantage of them.
Thank you. So that's the training of the technology use and being aware of what is the latest cutting edge technology is something that we can continue the dialogue on, because it's always changing and evolving. So now I want to open the floor to any question and answers or remarks or experience sharing. There's one over there. If you want to introduce yourself and where you're from before you're asking the question, please.
Thank you. My name is Hassan Ali. I work for the World Bank. So I think it's been very informative, and very glad to see the progress being made on the sustainable development procurement front. So I think it goes without saying that we all have to support participation of SMEs, women-led businesses, women-owned businesses, through whatever preferences in the selection processes. Maybe ease of financial burden, for example, reduce the bid securities or avoid bid securities, or make payments easier for them. However, the fundamental question that still prevails, and we need to, I think, as procurement leadership, we need to have a very clear understanding. What are we talking about in terms of SMEs? Who are SMEs? Who are we talking about? Women-led businesses, women-owned businesses? They may be men-owned businesses which employ 90% women, for example, which may have even a much bigger impact. So the question I think we all need to have, because procurement, as you know, we need to have some transparency in the selection. If you're going to give some domestic preferences or some preferences to certain groups, we need to have a clear definition through our rules or whatever of what are these groups that we are going to give preference to. Because we keep hearing so many different terminologies, women-led, women-owned, SMEs, MSMEs. So, and many countries still don't have a categorization in their regulations of what are these groups. So I think that's the starting point where we need to see who are we focusing on. Thanks.
Yeah. Building that sort of system and element using and within the country would work to sort of fit in with their own ecosystem. So that's a very important point. I think Mr. Hu also mentioned that is the practice in the People's Republic of China as well. Does anyone want to respond to that from the panel or the floor? If not, then we can also have room for maybe another question if anyone wants to raise a hand. Yes. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Leslie.
Yes, no, I was going to say that, well, with the IDB's work when supporting the countries on programs for promoting women in public procurement, one of the first thing we do is we suggest that countries do just that, take a look at what their regulations and make sure that they have a clear definition, because otherwise you don't know who you're targeting or what you're trying to achieve. And I think that's very important from the very beginning when establishing these kind of programs. So I absolutely agree with the comment of the speaker. And yes, every country has different definitions, but you have to make sure it's clear and that everyone has clear what who exactly your audience that you're talking about. Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie. I see there's a question from there as well.
Yeah, you can try to ask.
Thanks. I'm Sanjay Agarwal. I'm advisor procurement policy for Government of India. I don't have exact question, but more of a comment. And this comment is in my capacity that I'm also chairman of National Task Force for Sustainable Public Procurement of India. I think it has been very informative session. Just one comment is that SPP has a 3 pillars: economic, social, and green, economic, and social. While in the case of a green and in the case of a social, we have a much more clear understanding how to measure that. I found that in the case of a green, the things are more complicated. And I say why, and this is based on our experience. In case of green procurement, you can achieve that by 2 distinct streams. One is to change the specification or specify the items. Another thing which has been discussed by one of the speakers is on the life cycle costing. I think life cycle costing is still very subjective. And I just want to share one of the case study which we have done. We recently bought some metro coaches. The tender was for $600 million US. And instead of using simple L1 system, we decided to pay based on the energy cost for next 30 years. We paid $100 million extra. Now the question comes, even if I'm paying $100 million upfront extra, how to really ensure that these promises will be met? You surely can't take a bank guarantees for next 30 years. The cost of the bank guarantees will be more than $100 million. You can't have a penalty because the penalty really doesn't help because it's still the vitiating a tender and it's not really helping the green cause. And second thing, the life cycle costing, even if you adopt, what should be the discounting rate? And the discounting rate keep on changing and you surely can't really predict the discounting rate for next 30 years. So I still feel life cycle cost is a tool which is yet to be developed. We have been continuously engaged for last 4 years with the UN Environment. The UN Environment Chief, Farid Jakar, we have been engaged for last 5 years. We're still groping the answers. We still do not have an answer. So while yes, SPP needs to be promoted, absolutely no doubt. But at the same time, we need to do much more. Maybe the MDPs can take leadership in that to have a very clear understanding how to use the life cycle costing. For the specification, surely we can go. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjay. And I know we have got a few minutes left. So a further deep dive on some of those practical tools, such as life cycle costing, and perhaps how electronic procurement can help with that. Definitely warrant a session on its own. And if there's anyone who has experience on that, I encourage you to further that exchange and dialogue also throughout the conference as well. Does any of the panelists or speakers want to add on to the point around life cycle costing and further guidance and methodology around that? Yes.
I will engage myself once again. I would like to, there is one thing to say that you all understand and you are working on all of, when we are talking about green economy and sustainable development, when does it give us some tangible outcome, measurable outcome? It's sometimes hard to measure. However, there are new indicators appearing. For instance, in circular economy, there is a new indicator, complex indicator, helping you to measure the outcomes of sustainable and circular economy. But sustainable development goals are actually long-term. aims. They give outcome over a longer period of time. So that's what we are aiming for. We are talking about future generation. We are not talking about something that will give us the outcome maybe right away, but 20, 30, 100 years after. And this is the whole point. That's why it's very hard. I would agree with you that it's very hard to measure the outcome in a shorter period of time. What benefits will we see in 5 years' time? But this is still the way to go. And of course, the outcomes of green economy and green procurement in particular, in compliance with sustainable development goals, are quite evident. But some quantitative expression might be hard right away and now, but it's easy to understand how well they will express themselves over a longer period of time. And you probably would agree with me that sustainable development goals are spanning the longer period of time. And it's a weak point for us right now, because we cannot demonstrate often what will be the benefit today and tomorrow. But when you think about in longer spells of time, it will solve your social problems, it will relieve the burden on environment, and so on and so forth. And the human factor is of highest priority here, and environment protection as well. Having in mind the climate change that we are all witnessing and mitigation measures that we are trying to apply to it is what matters actually, and what makes us to care so much about it. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I want to maybe encourage us to build on the message from our Mongolian speaker yesterday about don't give up by carrying on. And I invite you all to join me in thanking our panelists today. And I want to advise that the morning tea and coffee is served outside the room. And we will recommence again at 10:45. Thanks very much.
Yes, sir.